how can we figure this out? The mixing department output, 20,000 units completed and transferred out, and 5,000 units in the ending work in process, 60% complete as to materials and conversion costs. So 5,000 units, 60% complete is 3,000, and our 20,000 units would give us our 23,000.
So we don't think about the last sentence?
I'm sorry.
So we just leave out the last sentence, like it's extra information?
Leave out the last sentence. The equivalent units of production.
The beginning.
Okay, so our beginning inventory is 1,000 units, 40% complete. So that's what we start with. As to materials and conversion costs, the mixing department's output during the period consists of 20,000 units complete and transferred out. So they're basically telling us, if I'm seeing it correctly here, we're starting the period with 1,000 units, 40% complete, which means we're at roughly an equivalent of 400, okay? Then, but that's not going to, they're giving us this information, but the 20,000 units completed and transferred out, what we're needing to figure out is what percent of our ending process is completed. 5,000 at 60% complete would equal how much, guys? That's the 3,000 there, so the 23. Let's do a problem, guys. How about that? What's the first problem I have you guys set up to do? Can you help me? What? Let's figure this out. What is it? So the managerial chapter 3 work class. And view, edit. So exercise 3.2. Who wants to start by reading that, guys? Who can start? How about Alexandra? Allie.
Yeah, I didn't have my textbook today.
Okay. How about Vanessa? Do you mind, reading the question for 3.2?
Yeah. Pasta company manufactures pizza sauce through 2 production departments, cooking and canning. In each process, materials and conversion costs are incurred evenly throughout the process. For the month of April, the working process account shows the following methods.
So, sorry, let me find it. So, journalize the April transactions. So this pizza sauce has to go through 2 methods. They have to cook it, then they have to can it. In the month of April, the work in process accounts show they started the cooking with nothing, but the canning had 4,000 work in process at the beginning. We've got our materials, our labor, our overhead costs, and then what got transferred into canning. So what is our work in process for the cooking, the materials? The work in process, what are the cost of materials for the month that got put into cooking? 21,000, right? See how 21,000 got put into cooking? And how many dollars worth of raw materials got put into canning? 9,000. So out of raw materials inventory, how much is that? 30,000? Now, factory labor. What does it tell us about our factory labor that got put into the cooking versus the canning? 8,500 for one. And what about the canning? So what's that a total of? 15,500. Then overhead. What do we have to do for overhead here? What went into cooking? And what went into canning? And the total there, 57,300. And then cost transferred in to from canning, from cooking to canning. What does it say? 53. Got taken out of cooking, got put into canning. Spaghetti sauce. So basically this is helping you see the process of it flowing from one to another. Let's start and do exercise 3. Does it help you guys going through these problems?
Yes.
I think that's the only way I learn, is to do problem after problem. Okay, exercise 3. Let's see who. Boy, oh boy. Ash? Does Ashley want? Do you want to read? Who's Ashley? Do you mind? Exercise 3. So the first question is, how many units are in process at May 31st? How do we know how many units are in process at May 31st? Let's start by work in process of May 1st. How many units are there? Work in process May 1st. Not the cost, the dollar cost, but how many? 400. Then started into production. How many? 1,400. Total units to be accounted for here, 1,800. How many units were transferred out? 1,500. So how many were in work in process still at the end of the period? 300. So do you see? We're just going through the same process that we did in the previous chapter to determine. We always start with our beginning balance. We add what goes into production less what either was transferred out or what's sitting on, still in work in process to come up with our difference. Now, what is the unit material cost for May? So how are we going to determine the unit material cost for May? How many units were transferred out? many units were transferred out?
1,500.
God, you're good. How'd you figure that out? Okay, 1,500 units. And what were the conversion costs? 100%, 1,500. Work in process.
Isn't it 50/50?
Units transferred out. We're dealing with equivalent units here.
All the conversion costs.
Units transferred out would be totally completed. 1,500 units were transferred out. The beginning in process had material cost of $2,040 and conversion cost of $1,550. The unit ending, but what is the unit material cost for May? But what we're doing here is right now, in figuring this out, we're just dealing with our equivalent units. We're trying to figure out, then we're going to add in our costs, okay? But let's do this portion first, okay? In here, we're just dealing with equivalent units. We're trying to figure out the costs. So our materials, we had 1,500 units, and conversion costs 1,500 units, okay? What is our work in process at the end of the period, guys? 300. Do you see what I'm saying? And then when we talk about, for materials, we have this, here, let me do it this way. We'll show it this way. 300 units, 100% would be the materials of 300. But what are our conversion costs here? 300 units at what percent? At what? 40% for conversion cost. And what is that amount equivalent? 120. You see what I'm trying to do? So our total here I can't. So this here is 1,800 units. The conversion costs here are, darn, sorry. Okay, our total equivalent conversion cost are how much? 1,520. Do you guys see what I'm saying? What we're doing here is we have to initially determine our units, and then from our units we've got to, because our volume is so great, we've got to transfer everything down into equivalent units and then take all the cost and divide it by those equivalent units. Right? No, this is 1,620, not 1,520. Right? 1,500. So now, what we've got to do is now let's take the actual costs here. So as we move down here, we started the work in process on May 1st with how many dollars? The beginning work in process had material cost of $2,040. See that? $2,040. How many dollars worth of conversion costs? $1,550. What costs were added? Costs added. The unit ending, what did we add? We started with 2,040. What did we add to it? Materials of 5,160, right? So we have total costs here . Sorry, 2,040 and 5,160 gives us 7,200 here. And our equivalent units up here of 1,800 So our unit cost, so if we take our 7,200, shoot, what am I doing? 2,040 plus 7,160 is 7,250, right? And if 7,200, God. And if we divide that by our 1,800 units, what's our equivalent cost, or our cost per unit? 7,200 divided by 1,800 is how many dollars a unit? $4.